Five Nights at Freddy's, Salvage, Chapter 3. When Max returned to work, Vicky had snuck into his office and was waiting there for him with a gift box in her paws. "What if someone sees you?" he protested. "Exactly why I came here," she replied. "Anyway, I made you a present." Max opened the box, revealing a shiny metal flashlight with some sort of compartment on the bottom. He tried to switch it on, but nothing happened. He opened the compartment, expecting a battery area, but a short IV tube spilled out. Max looked at Vicky for a few seconds before she finally explained. "It's a flashlight that runs off of your blood instead of batteries. Don't worry, it won't suck the life out of you or anything. It only needs like an ounce or two to last each night." Still nervous, Max stuck the IV into his upper wrist. He watched as a very small amount of blood leave him, but it barely hurt. "Now here's the cool part," Vicky said as she flipped the flashlight switch. It shone an eerie red as blood. "Red is a harder color for enemies to detect at night, and it even picks up on things normal lights can't." Vicky wagged her tail. "Isn't that neat?" Max made himself smile. Vicky was creepy at times like this, sure, but she was only befriending him in the best way she knew how to befriend a human. He carefully removed the IV and tucked it back into the flashlight before turning it off. "Thanks, Vicky. I kind of wish I could give you a gift, too." Grinning, the hybrid nuzzled his face with her head. "Trying to stop Afton is enough of a gift to me," she softly growled. Max gave her a hug before returning his attention to the security cameras. Management had agreed that Max could intermittently switch between the night shift and the day shift. The pay was about $200 per week, but it wasn't too bad. As long as the bills were paid and food was put on the table, Max wasn't really breaking a sweat. Not to mention, it was a good idea to switch shifts routinely if he wanted to keep an eye on certain events or things. Right now, Max was keeping a close eye on the stages. There were day guards who took different shifts watching any given area, but he felt like a little extra caution wouldn't hurt, especially when looking at the company's track record. Vicky broke the silence with a question. "Did I ever tell you I had a brother?" Max shook his head. "No, I don't believe you did." He flipped to the next camera. The animatronic continued. "I know it sounds weird, but before Afton created me, he was working on this prototype of sorts, almost like a male version of me. We used to have so much fun together." Vicky was quiet for so long that Max turned to look at her. "So what happened to him?" he asked. She seemed sad when she replied. I guess my bro wasn't good enough for Will. He might have been taken apart and used for scrap, but I'm not really sure." Some clear fluid Max could have sworn was a tear spilled from one of Vicky's eyes and down her fur, as she stared at the checkered floor. Really? She could cry? How advanced was she? Max found his voice again. "I'm sorry to hear that, Vicky." "No, it's okay. I mean, who wants some big brother worrying about you all day, right?" Vicky tried to chuckle, but couldn't. With a huff, she peeked over Max's shoulder to view the screens. "Have you seen anything so far?" With a sigh, Max replied, "Afraid not. Got an eyeful of a kid picking his nose, though, so that's wonderful." Vicky actually laughed that time, and the sound made Max smile. Bonnie hummed softly to himself. Nobody but him could understand the strange melody, and even then he himself never fully understood it. All he knew was that it was attached to the child's soul living inside him, although, now that he thought about it, living wasn't exactly the best choice of words. The boy possessing his body, that's better, hummed the same tune every day, and Bonnie found himself humming along. From what the animatronic rabbit could gather, it was all that was left of the boy's past. The only thing the boy could remember was that his parents sung him the same exact song when he was alive. He couldn't recall anything else other than his killer. He never lived long enough to actually have a life, or form lasting memories with his family. Of course, neither did the others. This may in part have had something to do with their souls being displaced, but the human soul was a subject Bonnie never gave much contemplation. He left the thinking to their alpha, Freddy. Bonnie was never jealous of Freddy's leadership. The only one in the band who often challenged the bear was Foxy, but he was always put right back in his place, at the bottom of the pack. Bonnie often thought of himself as being the beta, but didn't say anything lest a fight ensue among him, Chica, and Foxy. Yes, Foxy was faster than all three of the others combined. Yes, Foxy may have even been the sly, cunning sea dog he was convinced he was. But Bonnie, as slow and lurching as he was, could be an intimidating, lumbering powerhouse when he so chose. Whatever. It was silly to dispute things like a pecking order when there were bigger things to deal with. The boy's soul hummed a little louder, as if to get Bonnie's attention back to his song. Yes, I'm digging it, little dude," he whispered to the spirit. As Bonnie stood on the stage next to his bandmates, humming with the boy and waiting for their show to start, he saw something he probably shouldn't have noticed if he followed his programming. The rabbit just so happened to be turning to his right when out of the corner of his eye, he saw a little girl wandering around all by herself. She must have been 3, maybe 4 years of age. "Where's your mommy, sweetheart?" Bonnie thought. The child's soul sensed his concern for the girl and stopped humming. She looked so scared and alone, like she didn't know where to go or who to turn to for help. And then a large figure towered over her. Bonnie flinched, looking upward along with the little girl. It was a black bear animatronic, with a golden star on his chest and a red top hat and bow tie. His yellow eyes flickered down at the child with an expression of unusual calmness, like she was right where he wanted her. Bonnie felt an all-too-familiar chill surge through his circuits. Sure, a lot of the newcomers were suspicious, and Freddy had his friends keep an eye on whoever they could, but this bear gave off some bad vibes. He just didn't know how to describe it. Freddy would have. He always knew what to say. The mysterious bear leaned down and said that he was eye level with the girl. He didn't speak to her, which Bonnie definitely found strange. Shouldn't he have asked her if she was lost, which she clearly was, or offer to help find her family? What happened next, Bonnie wouldn't forget. Not in the days to come, nor in later years when he'd be on his last legs, literally and metaphorically. What happened next scared the boy's soul within him, scared him so bad that Bonnie had to spend the next week or so comforting him and telling him that everything would be okay. No, of course she didn't die. In that split second, Bonnie wanted to walk right off the stage and kill that bear. But he knew if he did that, then the girl would certainly die. And what then? Bonnie would be put out of order, permanently. And his band needed him. The boy needed him. So many sets of eyes in the pizzeria, and nobody in it saw as the bear snatched the girl up in his paws, before she had time to register what hit her. His stomach cavity opened, and quick as a flash, she disappeared inside of him. The compartment slid shut, as though there never was a lost child standing there a moment ago. Then, like everything was fine, the bear with yellow eyes strode away. No screams from the girl. Nothing. Bonnie was so frozen that for a minute he wondered if his servos locked up. That'd be ironic, considering it was the main reason why the engineers let the animatronics roam around at night. Or so the cover story went. They were always trying to explain things away like that. "Freddy," he whispered from the corner of his mouth. The humans couldn't understand their quote-unquote warble talk, but he still had to keep his voice low. Freddy turned ever so slightly, eyeing Bonnie out of his peripheral vision. "A bear kidnapped that little girl, didn't you see it?" Freddy was silent at first, another characteristic that made him a foreboding alpha, his dangerous silence. But then he whispered back, "Tell me where they went, Bonnie. I'll take care of this." Bonnie pointed in the direction they went, which led through the arcade past the slews of people, into what they called the old backstage, that is to say, the original backstage at the pizzeria. For the past few days, salvage teams had been bringing in large wooden crates that had "Fragile" written on the sides in big red letters. Whatever had been in those crates didn't exactly come out to say hello, so Freddy felt suspicion in the pit of whatever passed for his stomach down there. Stupid thing. Never mind that. If some strange animatronic had come out and whisked a child away, that meant, "The killer is back," Freddy softly growled in that masculine tone of his. Chica shifted her gaze to the others. "I want both of you to stay here while I go handle that bear. If anybody sees that I'm gone, stall. Stall as long as you can." With that, Freddy walked off the stage. What does he think he's doing?" Max asked, his voice unable to help from getting a bit shrill. He knew he shouldn't panic if he wanted to keep his head in this murder mystery game gone wrong, but he couldn't control himself. Freddy decided to take a stroll during business hours, and if the managers saw it, they might decide to scrap him. Despite the rocky truce between him and the bear, Max knew he couldn't let that happen to him. Max turned to Vicky. "Go get your boyfriend back on the stage, please." The hybrid crossed her arms and blushed. "First of all, we're not even serious yet. Do you know how much more tension that label would cause us? Secondly, how am I supposed to do that? There's people everywhere," she whined. Max was getting impatient. He replied, "Use your cloak and components, and hurry. He could get scrapped, Vicky." As Vicky headed for the door, she glanced over her shoulder at Max. "He doesn't just do this stuff for no reason, you know. And if I were you, I'd keep an extra eye out." Then she dashed away, vanishing into thin air. The guard snapped out of his stupor and turned back to the cameras. Thankfully, the video feed for the old backstage area still remained. He didn't understand why the pizzeria had to be expanded upon so much. It just made his job as a security guard that much harder. He leaned forward to make out the shapes in the back room. Stupid reception, Max grumbled as he hit a few keys, trying to make the picture more clear. Even CNN cameras get better quality than this. Once he had the brightness up as high as it would go, he amplified the footage. The next moment, he couldn't believe his eyes. There were some large figures backstage. There was a medium-sized black bear animatronic and one that looked eerily similar to Vicky. No way, Max thought. He zoomed in on the other figures and nearly spit out his coffee. All fully operational, minus chunks of plastic missing from different parts of their bodies, were the toys, the ones Max could have sworn were scrapped. And in the center of this nightmare parade was William Afton brandishing a hatchet. Max wished he didn't send Vicky after Freddy. He cursed under his breath as he jumped out of his swivel chair, leaving it spinning like a carousel with its controls set to fast. He made sure he had his taser on him before leaving the office. But the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that, in the long run, it would do him no good. He was outnumbered. Sure, it would have been much scarier if this was going on at night, but the possibility of being murdered by animatronics in broad daylight? Hey, at Freddy's, it seemed like anything could happen. As he was getting ready to get Vicky out of there, if required, she had caught up with Freddy. Somehow he seemed to have sensed she was following him and held up one paw, signaling her to slow down. "What is it?" she whispered, coming to his side. Freddy pulled her close with one arm, and they both peeked around the corner. None of the animatronics noticed them, but they still needed to be cautious. In the center of the room was William Afton, holding up the hatchet like he was the ringmaster in some demented circus. Vicky hadn't seen him for so long that she didn't realize how much she was trembling, until Freddy put his other paw on her shoulder to still her. He nodded, understanding. "I know," he said gently into her ear. "This isn't good, but don't worry. We'll figure something out." Max is supposed to figure something out, Vicky thought. All they could do was watch and wait. "So good to have you all here," Afton was saying. "Old friends, new friends, but we have some work to do. Lefty, I do believe you got a new playmate for us." The black bear stepped forward, a cryptic grin on his face.